Hola, bona tarda. Benvinguts a Blanquerna, a l'Auditori de la Facultat de Comunicació i Relacions Internacionals. Jo sóc la Judit Colell, sóc la vicedegana d'Empresa i Sostenibilitat de la facultat, quin lío m'he fet. I aquest acte estem molt contents d'haver-lo pogut organitzar amb l'Americana, que us agraïm molt que hagueu decidit venir aquí, i amb el GAC, que també som molt bons amics, perquè jo també estic a l'Acadèmia de Cine Català. I aquest acte l'estem organitzant des del màster de producció executiva en proa i des del màster de ficció, de direcció, guió i producció, que estan aquí els alumnes, benvinguts també. I bé, estem molt... És un honor, it's an honor to have you here. I'm also a director and I know that you have been a reference for a lot of students, a lot of directors that are now doing films. So thank you for being here. L'acte serà una xerrada, entrevista, entre l'Elisabet Cabeza, que és la directora del grau de Comunicació Audiovisual aquí a la facultat, i també, a part de directora, és la corresponsal de Screen International i també treballa per Sight and Sound. I ara, si us sembla, els companys del GAC i de l'Americana us faran una breu benvinguda.
Moltes gràcies per ser aquí. Pel GAC sempre és un honor que es pugui parlar de guió i ser aquí coparticipant amb aquest cas la Llull, perquè és que tinc els dos barrets, Llull i Acadèmia. Amb la Llull i amb l'Americana és un plaer. Espero que gaudiu d'aquesta iniciativa i que sigui la primera de moltes. Ja n'hem fet. Thanks for being here.
Doncs res, poca cosa. Moltíssimes gràcies per acompanyar-nos, moltíssimes gràcies a Blanquerna per acollir-nos i per la facilitat amb tot, i al GAC també. Thank you for joining us, tots sols. La veritat és que enguany fem 10 anys, l'Americana, no sé si ens coneixeu o no, i quan començàvem a preparar el festival teníem moltes ganes de tenir un convidat molt especial, i el primer nom que vam decidir entre el Josep i jo va ser volem tirar la canya tots sols. I afortunadament va dir que sí, aquí el tenim. I per què vam decidir tots sols? Doncs perquè quan vam veure Bienvenidos a la Casa de les Muñecas ens va explotar el cap, com a la majoria de gent. Happiness un altre cop. Bàsicament és un director super de referència nostra, i hem tingut 2 pel·lis seves a l'Americana, una retrospectiva i Winner Dog en el seu moment. I molt especialment perquè, a banda de ser un director molt indie, d'aquests molt punyents, per nosaltres l'indie és aquella cosa políticament incorrecta que no pots veure una pel·li convencional. Els que hagueu vist la seva filmografia sabeu que encaixa perfectament. I a més és un director que ha guanyat premis a Cannes, a Venècia, a Sundance, a Toronto, ha estat nominat al Globus d'Or com a millor guionista, i tot i així no s'ha venut mai i continua sent el paradigma de l'indie, i volíem tenir-lo aquí. Així que estem supercontents. Avui és la primera activitat de l'Americana. L'Americana, a partir de demà, comença la retrospectiva a la Filmoteca Tots Sols, esteu més que convidats també. I del 7 al 12 estem a Cinema Girona, Fenòmena i Somseig amb la programació regular. Teniu totes les dades a la web, teniu programes demà per aquí, i això, com sempre, intentem portar el millor indie. Tenim joietes com La belleza y el dolor, un documental que és la inauguració, que està nominat a l'Oscar i va guanyar millor pel·lícula a Venècia. Tot és un documental, amb la qual ja tenim aquella cosa que comencen els documentals a trencar una mica la barrera, i em sembla molt interessant i molt bonic. Doncs això, moltíssimes gràcies per acompanyar-nos.
Per acabar. Ara donem pas a un petit vídeo amb un petit resum de la filmografia, i després seguirà l'entrevista, la xerrada entre l'Elisabet i el Tots Sols, i després obrirem un Q&A per vosaltres, els que tingueu preguntes per fer-li. Gràcies.
Raindrops are falling on my head, and just like the guy whose feet are too big for his bed, nothing seems to fit. Those raindrops are falling on my head, they keep falling.
Bé, doncs benvinguts. Ara passo ja a l'anglès. Welcome, Mr. Solons. It's a real pleasure to have you here with us today. And since they introduced the retrospective and the reasons why you were chosen for this year's festival, Americana, first of all, I would jump into storytelling straight away, because a lot of your films allude, a lot of the characters allude to the concept of storytelling. You even have a film under that name, and I'm thinking of the writer's sister in Happiness, who lives in a state of irony. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but you usually do you prefer the term storyteller to define what you do more than filmmaker? And if you could elaborate a bit on the reasons that took you into this path.
I can speak now. Yeah, sure. Well, I guess I'm a filmmaker first because that's what I put on the tax form. So, but I am. That just doesn't mean I'm not also a storyteller. I don't know if you're not a storyteller. I don't know how to be a filmmaker. I suppose you can be a non-narrative filmmaker, but if I were just a storyteller, it would be much less stressful, the job. But I do teach filmmaking in New York. NYU is the name of the school. I teach people that want to be filmmakers, and they've been very successful. They've done very well. Charlotte Wells, After Sun, Chloe Zhao, Shaka King, and Ray Green. They were all my students. I take no credit, no blame. But what I always tell my students, the question, the challenge for them is to figure out what is the story they want to tell. It's fundamental to storytelling, to filmmaking. Particularly today, when there are so many things on television or on the computer, whatever your iPhone, to distract you. So easy to switch channels. So you really have to learn, how do I hook my audience? And that comes down to the narrative choices you make, the storytelling strategies. But it does take a long time to figure out what that story is that you're trying to tell. I know that when people ask me, did you make the movie you intended to make? The answer is always no. I write a script. Of course, I think it's genius. Otherwise, what's the point of going forward? But I think I know what the story is, and then I get on set and I discover it's not quite what I thought it was, with the actors and the locations and so forth. And then I get in the cutting room, and then I learn to accept, no, I'm not a genius. The script was not a genius script. And I distill from that material. I discover what the real story is here, not the one I thought. And then when it screens for audiences, and I talk to people like my friend here, I discover new meanings that I hadn't been fully conscious of. So filmmaking, it is very much a process of discovery and self-discovery at that. And I think if you're not approaching it with that kind of open mind, I don't know how interesting the process can be for you.
In Winner Dog, one of the themes that is tackled is this idea of roads not taken, if I think of the famous poem by Robert Frost. I feel that professionally you haven't chosen the less traveled road in the sense of, challenging topics, and how much were you aware of the difficulties that would bring in from a commercial point of view or from an industry point of view, but also if you felt free exploring the topics that moved you to put the story on paper and then work on all this process you were alluding to.
Well, it's true. I have chosen the path of less profitability. My movies have lost more and more money with each subsequent production. But one of the things, when you mention a wiener dog, it was one of the things that compelled me to pursue this. Was I'd always wanted to create an alternate trajectory for my character, Dawn Wiener. It's because in one movie she dies, and so I wanted to give another possible trajectory in which she lives. I mean, there's so many possibilities of the ways in which our lives can advance, and it's unpredictable, and there's so much randomness that I wanted to have that chance to give her another path forward. I remember when I made Palindromes, I digressing, but I remember when I made Palindromes, initially I was going to cast Heather Matarazzo, who played Dawn Wiener in Welcome to the Dollhouse, in that movie, and she was going to live. But then she decided she wanted some script changes, and so I said, we'll work again maybe another time. It wasn't going to work out, so I killed her. But then I brought her back to life. I like to, when we look at our lives, we always think what we could have, should have, would have, the difference. So many. I could have not been here so easily. I could not have made these films so easily. It's just on a dime that I feel that luck plays such a big factor in my success or failure, or having a career at all, this quasi-career. So that's always been something I've been very conscious of. I don't know. I'm going on about things. I don't know if I've even addressed your questions, though.
No, yeah, I think you did, because in a way, what has defined your style has also been a difficulty on a logistic level, in the sense of finding the financing for your
You're
films.
Telling me.
I don't know if you wondered if you should have moved to Europe, for example.
Yeah. I look. It's beautiful. Barcelona is beautiful. What can I say? But I'm shaped by the experience of growing up in my country. And that's what informs my work. And I think if I tried to make movies set in Barcelona, I would feel like a tourist that was making those movies. I'd hoped to make a film a number of years ago in Spain, in fact. I was going to work with Penelope Cruz and Edgar Ramirez. And the idea was to shoot Spain for Texas. The movie's set in Texas, but I remember having seen the Sergio Leone films that he had created the West in Spain. And so I thought I could do that as well, but I just couldn't get enough money. So I had to rethink, and I still hope I'll make the movie. I won't be able to be with Penelope and Edgar, but Right now it's supposed to be Rachel Weisz and Colin Farrell, and we're supposed to shoot in, I don't know when, but I mean, I was just telling some of my hosts here, that I must be so toxic if you've got these movie stars and you still can't get the money, But I have to say that that said, that the Spanish, my understanding from the little information I get is that the Spanish distributor or company that has seen the material is very supportive of the project and would like to be a part of it. So I'm very pro-Spain. But we'll see. Vamos a ver.
Now, going back to this world you've created, I was thinking of the links with classic melodrama, in the sense that you take suburbia and the types of characters we might have seen in films from the 50s, but you take them into a different territory. Was there ever a link with were you influenced by the tradition of the classic melodrama? And basically, I'm really curious to know what drew you to this type of characters and stories in American suburbia.
Well, I am, just to be clear, I grew up in the suburbs of New Jersey, which is like a half hour, 40 minutes away from New York City. So I am shaped by that experience. But I feel like I was much more shaped by what I watched on television. That had such a big impact, and the movies I was able to see, because I was only allowed to see a movie if it had the Disney imprimatur. My family, my parents would never let me see anything more disturbing than Disney. They just didn't know how disturbing Disney was, but. So in each of my movies, there are all sorts of references to, when I did Welcome to the Dollhouse, it wasn't a movie, it was actually, in that case, there was a TV show, an American sitcom called The Wonder Years. And it was insufferable. It was just so hard for me to imagine how such a show could be so popular. And I think I wanted, it was a kind of response to that experience of seeing such a sitcom. In other movies, in Happiness, I know Shadow of a Doubt played a big role. That's the Hitchcock film. That had an impact on me. And Palindromes, I remember, there was The Sound of Music, which was my favorite film when I was a child, and never could stop singing the songs. And my siblings would beat me up every time they heard another rendition of my favorite things. But and The Wizard of Oz in there, Night of the Hunter is in that film as well. There are always movies that have an impact on me and that come into play, that shape my approach to the material. I think I told Jordi Costa many years ago how when I made Welcome to the Dollhouse, I remember we were looking for, in the script, there's a scene where the bully corners this classmate, a girl, and I had written it so that it would take place in a shadowy, dark, shadowy hallway or near a staircase, something very film noir. And when we scouted locations, we found this school that would give us permission. But the architects for the school was so genius because there were no corners, there were no shadowy places where a bully could get someone. So I had to think, now, if I'm a bully, where would I get that person, get my classmate? And so I found a place, just a side exit entrance, near a dumpster, and I had the bully attack her there, and in the background it was a bright sunny day, and there was a soccer game going on amongst the students there, and they were having a lovely time playing soccer while she was, she had a knife to her neck, and I got this idea about space and light really from having watched and read about Hitchcock's North by Northwest and how he wanted to create a sense of suspense out there in the cornfields of Iowa, where Cary Grant is trying to outrun this assassin plane, I don't know. And so everything comes in handy. I see when I went to college and I was finally able to watch adult movies. I don't mean pornographic, I mean adult. It's confusing. And
Disney movies.
Not just Disney movies. Because I remember when One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest came out, I really wanted to see that. My mom, she came back and she said, "Oh, I saw a movie, Todd." I said, "I know, I want to see that." "You're too young." And I was 16 years old. So going to college was, at that time, it was just liberating because, and I could see, they didn't have DVDs, they didn't have even VHS. So every night films would be projected. There are different film societies. You could see a triple bill of Groucho Marx and then Godard and then Maya Deren, etc. every night. And because I was so socially timid, let's say, it was also a kind of sanctuary for me to escape the reality of being an 18-year-old at a university. So that was my education. That's where I didn't have to understand the movie. I just took it all in. It's you read books, you watch movies, you go to museums, and you have everything serves you. If you are an artist, filmmaker, what have you, you can not let anything go. Everything. It's. I think Henry James, said, you want to be that person on whom nothing is lost, because it's all material, and it's material for you to shape. Yes, I'm shaped by where I grew up, the people, my family, the friends, and so forth. All of that, all of those experiences that maybe we don't even want to share and talk about amongst each other because we're so embarrassed. Let's say all of that is stuff that cinema can articulate and help us discover that we are not alone. Because that is what when I go to the movies, and I really take great pleasure in what I'm watching, it is always that reception of that, receiving that message that you are not alone. Because I think we need to be reminded of that.
We have the unique opportunity to be able to ask you. You mentioned that an artist has to be, has to have his eyes, ears open to what's going on around him. But when it comes to sitting down and writing, could you tell us a bit about the process of writing the screenplay and what draws you? Is it character over plot? A bit sort of, and maybe we could take film as an example. I don't know, like Happiness, for example. Where did the first idea for Happiness come from? Or if you're happier talking about another film, but just maybe because the audience could relate to how the process that then you said grows into the process of production and post-production, changing everything all the time. So if you
Happy
could
to talk about Happiness. That script, I think because I had just had a great deal of success with this film, Welcome to the Dollhouse, and I didn't trust it. I was anxious in some. I was thrilled, but I was also anxious about the success of the film, and I wanted to take advantage of that success by writing something that I couldn't. This movie wouldn't be able to get made without having had the success of a film making some money beforehand. So I wrote that script, and I wrote 30 pages, and then and let me go back, because I didn't know what the movie would be. I didn't know. I'm very instinctive. I have no outlines. I can't work with an outline. I find it. I discover it in the process of writing. I've been writing since I'm reading. It's just something I do, not religiously, not rigorously, not every day, but I do it. It's a part of my life. So I wrote 30 pages, and I had a couple of friends. They're not film people, really, but they were friends, and I knew that they would be honest with me. Film people maybe would want to be supportive of me, which isn't the same thing as being honest. Make me feel better. But I had one question for them after they read the 30 pages. I just wanted to know one thing. Do you want to know what happens next? And they said, yes. Okay. And that's how I wrote it in 30-page pieces. And just, should I keep going? Do you want to keep? He says, yes. So that's all I wanted to hear. And then I figured, I didn't know. I knew that I was dealing with delicate material, that it was a little troubling. The only way in which I changed my ways was I changed my telephone number and went unlisted. But otherwise, it felt. It's funny because I like the Bill Maplewood character. I think I was drawn to the idea of creating someone so loathsome to society, someone everyone would hate. And I wanted to say, in some way, I wanted to get into the heart of this person and not write him off. I'm not saying I sympathize with what he does, but I do recognize that he is human, and that is what was driving me. I think I can see at this point generally drawn to those that are the outsider and so forth. Now, of course, people think I'm an insider, but if I'm an insider, but then you feel like you're outside the outside, so it all really depends on how you see yourself. So that's that. What drove me was to, I didn't even know what I was doing. I really didn't. And it was only when I showed it to other people and the reactions were kind of strong that I realized I must have written something here. I wasn't so conscious of it. having the impact that it ended up having. I'm always surprised, you know. I mean, you never know. You write something, you're alone in a room, and that's how I work, and I need quiet. I'm alone, and I just do it. But will this have any meaning or communicate meaning, experience to others? That I never know. So it is always very, very gratifying to discover it speaks to other people, and it says something good about mankind, I think, insofar as, you know, I know the movie had a very divisive response. A lot of people just hate me in the film, and other people very much embrace it. And often when I walk around in New York, I mean, people have come up and said, "Oh, I really love that movie. It really meant a lot. I really liked it." And that's very sweet, and I'm very gratified. But people who hate the movie, they don't assault me. And it says something good about people, that they have the discretion and consideration that they don't attack me. Because there are just as many people who don't like what I do as people who do.
Excuse me for being inquisitive, but when you mentioned these 30 pages, because considering it's an ensemble cast and different stories, a bit like Robert Altman kind of
Right.
crossing. So my question was also to do with the fact that whether it's a theme-driven story, or you think of the character in this case. I don't know if there was a character and then you build around them, or how what was the kernel of the idea, of the first idea?
I don't know. I don't remember. Generally I don't start with ideas. I have I have a scene, and I write the scene, and I see, where will this take me? Where are these people going? And I need a sense of where they're headed towards. I may be wrong, but I need to have a sense of direction. I mean, these characters, it's funny, you know, the Phil Hoffman character, you know, everybody in Hollywood actors, they all wanted to play that part. They all said, "That is me." Yeah. And no, it was very stressful. People, they fly in from all over. They say, "That is me. I must play," you know. But I was lucky. I didn't have any pressure to cast a star. They tried with the other part, with the Bill Maplewood part, and nobody said, "That is me." Okay. Nobody wanted to play it. Nobody who had a career, at least. The ones who had a career were not going to play this part. So that freed me, and I got to cast someone I so wanted to, who auditioned. I discovered this guy, and yeah, I don't know that it's very hard to get a budget. We had I think $2.5 million to make the movie at the time, and I don't know that you could do that now without any stars. You know, they didn't insist on any. So I was very, very lucky in that way at that time, because Phil Hoffman was not a star. I went off. I don't even remember. Oh yeah, you wanted to know how does it start? Because maybe you're aspiring writers or aspiring screenwriters. I don't know. Maybe that's why. Okay, that's why. Look, there are no rules to this, really. What works for you is going to not work that way for you. You know, everyone has a different way of working. But, you know, it's like I tell my students, you know, you want to make a movie only you could make, but not only you can sit through, if you follow. Oh, someone gets that. Okay. I you know, you're all young, and I look at when I look at my students, I say, they're young and hopeful and ambitious, and my heart goes out to you. I'm grateful not to be those three things, because I know how hard it is. I could never be young, hopeful, and ambitious again like that. It's just everything. It's a great torment. It just I know the pain of this, okay? And it's not like if you go to law school, you'll be a lawyer, you go to medical school, you'll be a doctor, you go to film school, you could work at Starbucks and that's it. There's no promise of anything because it's an art. And there are many, as I said, many of my students have done quite well. Basically it comes down to just sit down and do it. I mean, everyone likes to say I'm a director, but okay, what's your story? Okay, if I go to a wedding or a bar mitzvah, people come up to me and they say, I've got a story. Oh, I've got a story. I say, good, then you write it, okay? I got enough here that to work with. But so those, those filmmakers, those people who actually manage to have something resembling a career that get not just a movie, but a career of some sort going, I think the one common denominator is that they all have a certain tenacity. They must make movies. And if you don't love it, then cut your losses early. It's just too hard. Making movies, for me, it's not fun. But it's the price I pay if I want to get one done. I don't have the right personality as a director because, Ang Lee, he's just amazing. He has 100, 200 people there on set. He never feels more alive. For me, I know, like my obituaries, Mr. Solondz collapsed the third day of the shoot. It's just stress for me. It's so stressful. I dread every day, and there's never enough time. It's just so hard. And I have to say, it was definitely worse when I was younger, because now I'm accepting. I've already accepted. I'm in my final trimester, and I'm just more accepting of where I am in life. It's however you do it, with a pen or on the computer or on your iPhone, you just have to have that discipline and do it. And before I went to film school, I wrote 2 scripts. They were very juvenile, but how did I get through them? I just gave myself a rule, 3 pages a day. That was just do it. And I had a coherent piece. It was just 3, and it took 6 weeks. Technically, if you do 3 pages a day, you'll have 4 screenplays a year. But we're not robots yet. And actually, with the whole AI thing, I'm confident that certainly with sequels and genre movies, it's going to give you an AI job, and no one's going to know the difference. And they'll bring in a human being to do a little sweetening. I do think it's going to change things. Because right now already people can't tell what is it a human that actually wrote this. It does, feel somewhat robotic, some of the scripts that get made. So, but you have to, what is it, if it matters that much to you, I've been telling stories, as I say, since I'm was reading, and that's just a part of me. And for some people, and because everyone's saying he started when he's reading, oh my God, I'm finished. But people discover it at different times. They tap into that part of themselves that can generate stories and discover those stories. And some filmmakers, are prodigies, and they're 20 years old, and they've already, what's that Canadian, that Xavier yeah, right, he's already done 6 movies. He's 24, and but not everyone's a prodigy. I wasn't, and some people start much later. Altman really came into his full bloom really in his 40s, which, if you're young, is old. I think it's just, it's tenacity. It's sitting down, what matters. And if that story doesn't matter to you, that, you're willing to just, eat KFC for a month, whatever it takes, if whatever because there's always a kind of sacrifice in order if something meaningful is to emerge. What is it that matters to you and that you love? I mean, that way, even if the movie is a total failure and everybody hates it and it's the most pretentious thing they've ever seen, you can still take pride in it because that was your story. That pretentious piece of shit, that was you. That was your story. And stand by it. Yes.
You were alluding to the difficulties of getting films made. To what extent do you think the sense of morality in Hollywood has to do with the potential profit of the productions? And how have you seen it change? Because I don't know, I get the feeling that some films that were made in the 80s, 70s, and 90s would not be able to be made today, would they? I don't know if you could elaborate a bit on that.
Well, in the 80s, they said they couldn't make movies from the 70s, but I don't know if many people want to make movies from the 80s. But I can tell you, you can find anything any year, but the only morality everyone knows is if it makes money, that's moral. Okay, if it loses, that's not. I mean, that's the bottom line. When when Happiness premiered at Cannes, 25 years ago, it had a big reaction, but buyers were not running to pick this movie up. In fact, the French, which are the great cinephiles of the world, they did take the movie, but they paid $0 for it. It ended up being profitable, but that's how much confidence people had in the film. And the American the Universal Studios owned the company that had produced my film, and when the president of Universal saw it, there's something in the contract that says if your movie is morally unacceptable, I don't remember the term. Well, he said mine was morally unacceptable because, and he said we don't want any association with this film. And so what they did was they created an independent distribution company so it could be released in the United States. And what I wasn't permitted to talk about at the time, but now who cares, is that this distribution company was formed thanks to the loan that Universal Studios provided so that it could be released, and they could, in fact, whatever money it made, they would receive, so they could, if the movie were very profitable, it would go to Universal, but nobody would know. So that's the kind of morality that is what defines Hollywood. I think as long as you don't have illusions, I can respect that.
Well, maybe we could ask the audience if you have any questions. We could open the debate. If not, I can carry on. But it would be lovely. I think we have a question over there. and then a question over there. You'll have to remind me, okay? There, and then I'll...
Do I now I do this thing?
Will you be asked? Well, it depends whether they ask the question in English or not.
Hello. I'd like to ask a question about, for example, when filming a scene.
You want to stand up so we can see you
okay.
properly.
Excellent accent.
So basically, when filming a scene, even respecting the text and the script, how much space do you leave for improvisation?
About the questions about improvisation, how much I leave. Well, I shoot generally. I'm pretty close to. I have a pretty clear sense about what I want, and there isn't that much improvisation. But there are times when I need it and want it. There was a scene I know in Dark Horse. Two of my actors loved to improvise, and two of them did not. Like Mia Farrow and Selma Blair, they're not, improvising is not their thing, but Chris Walken loved it, and my main actor loved it. So the way to work with improvisation so that it serves you instead of trapping you, let's say, is you have to be very specific about what you're trying to achieve with the improvisation. Because if the parameters are not clearly defined, you're going to get into trouble, and then you're wasting time and resources. So you really have to be very precise about the parameters. And so yes, sometimes, not often, but sometimes I definitely would have my actors improvise.
Thank you.
Although sometimes an actor wants to improvise because he just doesn't know the fucking lines, you know? And that's a different story. I had a scene, I had one actress, she just couldn't get through her monologue. And I said, I don't know what the problem is. I said, maybe you didn't fucking memorize it. So we had to have, what do you call cards?
Like Marlon Brando in The Godfather.
We had to have cards, so that she could get through the monologue. And everyone says, "Oh, she's so good. She's so good." Yeah, I mean, for someone who can read, but that's what the magic of cutting. It looks great, Or I remember once in Dollhouse, that actor, I'll never forget. He was not so cool with me, but the guy who plays Steve Rogers, he's like the sort of cool guy. And I wanted him to say, "You're such a fascist," and he didn't know what a fascist was. So he said, "You're such a jerk." I said, "No." So I had to do one for him, and I said, "We'll do for you," and then I got him to say fascist. That's how I deal with improvisation. Okay.
Perfect, thanks.
Thank you. Over there, I think there was a question here, Pilar. Yeah, please.
Okay.
So we can see you.
Okay.
Are you having your water?
So, yeah.
Do you want some more?
Yeah, thanks. Oh, okay.
Hi, Todd.
No, it's all right.
We can bring you another
No,
one.
that's okay.
Is there another
That's
water?
okay. It's fine, sorry.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Okay, I'm just feeling so ashamed right now, please. Okay, so my question is, like you were talking about storytelling and what drives you to tell story. So I'm so curious about what did drive you to tell palindromes? What is the seed from, like what is, like it was like shocking for me, like I really like it and the way you tell it. So I just want to know more about it.
What inspired me?
What inspired you? What drives you to tell that? Like, okay, I want to. What did you want to tell? Maybe.
You have to forgive me. All these movies. It's a long time. Okay, I got but You know, I liked to play, okay? I like to play. I like to play with my audience. Sometimes my audience, they want to play with me. What can I do? But I think I really loved the idea of playing with this conceit of different actors playing the same parts, and to see if that could, while for some people I think it pushes them further away, for others perhaps it can bring them closer, that all different types of people could in fact embody this character. I think that so that it would lend it a certain kind of universality, that experience of this poor girl's story. I don't know what inspired. I think I did mention a few of the films that I took from to apply to this story. Oh yeah, I think I know what it was. I can't talk about that, but I can just say that I was very invested. Otherwise, if I'm not emotionally invested, it has no meaning for me, no value. Just to be, when you're young, you want to show how clever you are, but clever is such a thin thing, and we get tired of cleverness very quickly. And it's those, it's that, thank you. It's that, I'm just repeating myself, but if I have to have a kind of emotional investment with a character, and obviously it was maybe, now I'm remembering, it was also a very politically fraught time. When is it not politically fraught? But it felt that way to me at the time, knowing about the how certain people would murder abortionists and things like that. So in that sense, the whole abortion debate, etc. I don't know what it is here in Spain. I don't know even where you are with that.
Like we can abort for free.
Oh, we can abort for free. I just like it's like an advertisement, But
Completely different situation to
yeah.
the one in the States.
But certainly, like any good Catholic country, they have a history, So I think I was sensitive to, I was responding in some way to the currents that were at play in the United States at that time. Yeah, I don't know if I'm illuminating for you.
It was okay. Yeah.
Okay.
No, it was super okay. Thank you.
Gracias.
Thank you. I think there was a question there and then there. Pilar, on the other side. Row one. Well, there's one there, and then your turn. Okay.
Is most everyone in school?
Okay, and afterwards. There.
Hi. So my question is about writing, specifically, about the writing process. So your films have a certain degree of self-awareness and a certain degree. You talked about that, like how sitcoms might have influenced you and how you may play with the sitcom approach to deconstruct it, for example. So there's a certain degree of self-awareness. And as for characters, when you write, sometimes you need to connect with a character, like to be at its level, at his or her level. So my question is, how can you manage the balance between being on its level, on their level, and being able to do the self-aware soul?
If I understand you correctly, the question is about how this marriage of a kind of earnestness and an irony at the same time.
Yeah.
But that's what characterizes what I do and is reflective of my own sensibility about the way in which I experience and view the world. I think, I remember when we were doing, in fact, in storytelling in Belle and Sebastian, the all 9 of them flew out to New Jersey to go and record music for the film, and they did a lot of wonderful stuff, but I remember they weren't too pleased that some of the stuff I wanted was just sort of jingle music like you see on sitcoms that helps segue films from one to the next. And I wanted to kind of allude to the sitcom kind of feeling. So it's funny. But they were great. They gave me what I wanted and all of that. But although it was hard for them, interestingly, for them to understand that sometimes I can love a piece of music, but it's not what I want for the scene. If you don't mind, I'll get back to you, but I'm just thinking about music, when we were doing Happiness, in fact, we were supposed to work initially with this composer, Mark Shaman, who's just a lot of big Hollywood movies, lovely guy. And then the last minute, he backed out, and I was so angry. We became friends a year later, and he wrote songs for me, for Wiener Dog, for Life During Wartime, for no money. He's a lovely guy. But I was in a situation where I had no composer, and we had deadlines, and Michael Nyman's name had come up, and I like Michael Nyman's music, but I didn't know how I could make that work for this movie. And nevertheless, he's great. I said, okay, well, so they sent me to London to go and spend a few days with him. And I just felt day after day, I love Michael, love his music, wrong for the movie. We went back, I came back, I said, I can't use this. And I remember the head of the production company, because we'd signed already an $80,000 contract with him. He said, all right, there was a car accident. Now, how do we move forward? And so we found, my music supervisor found someone who could do it all in for $5,000, and do just what I wanted. But, music, it provides a kind of, sometimes a heightening of experience, sometimes a counterpoint. And I'm very sensitive to the musical aspect of the movies. I love working with musicians and everything to do with that. And that does connect with your question about earnestness and irony. Because, even in a movie like Palindromes, where I had, I temped in, I think, the music from Rosemary's Baby, and I used some stuff from Valley of the Dolls, and I had Nathan Larson recreate, in his own idiom, something that felt like that. And here you have a movie that the audience, I kind of, I guess, keep people, that you have to be a little bit alert. On the one hand, I want you emotionally connecting, and at the same time, it's like when I'm writing, I'm really into something, and then, don't laugh, no, I have different responses, it's suspenseful, it's moving, it's funny, all at the same time. It starts right there in the writing for me. And I think it carries through and it follows through into the films itself. Is there some recipe? No, I don't have a recipe. It's just the way I see it and experience it, and that the movies show that. So it's of no use to anybody else. It's just for me.
There's a question over here. Yes, and then.
Hi. Well, I have a couple of questions. I think the second one will be very fast. And the first one is quite related to the last one. It's about the empathy that you feel for your characters, because I think you have a kind of character that are very miserable and negative, and show as you have said before, all the things that people would hate about anyone, and you put it on them, and then try to see the human part on them. But I would like to know if you feel a lot of empathy for them, or if you feel sorry for them. Maybe, I don't know, Dawn from Welcome to the Dollhouse, and then we discover that she has been raped and committed suicide. And how do you feel when you take this kind of decisions for them, to punish them, I think? And the second one, I think it's quite fast. The decision of repeating characters from one movie to another, but changing actors, if it's something, an artistic decision, or is something maybe you couldn't get the original cast and you just did that. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, like I say, I like to be playful. I like to take advantage of having money to make a movie, and it's so hard to make a movie. It's so hard. For me, all those military metaphors are so apt. You're going to lose some men, some battles along the way, but you've got to come out with a movie in the end. And so I take advantage of that, and I like to try things a little bit different. I did. I mean, I don't know. I like to play. I don't know. I don't say anything more. I haven't anything more sophisticated to say than that. I forgot which the second or the first one was. What was the first question again?
Could you sum up the first question?
I forgot. Sorry.
Yeah, about if you feel sorry for your
right,
characters.
Right. Yeah. So it depends on the character, and it depends on the situation. Look, Dawn Wiener, she does things that, it's funny, when I was writing the movie, I was a little bit nervous before I made it. I was nervous that women would not like the movie, because, like, who the fuck are you? You're 35 white guy, who's like, what do you know about rape and an 11-year-old and all of that? A girl, who the fuck are you? And I was afraid I'd get attacked. And I'm lucky I wasn't. But I think in part because, Dawn does things that are not wise. They're things that an 11-year-old does that are not smart. Was it, smart to show up for the meeting with a guy who said he's going to rape her? No, but I believed it. I believed that she would show up. It made sense to me. It was true to the integrity of the character. So I had to be true to her and thereby respect her, rather than passing judgment on her. Because 11-year-olds, I mean, we never stop doing stupid things. That's the story of life, but you have to, it's much easier to pass judgment than to try and understand and where the other person is and how that makes sense, even if it's misguided. And so at times I might feel a kind of empathy for Dawn, and other times I think, oh no, why are you doing that? That's, why are you, and then she snitches on the bully guy, and she gets called a grade grubber. She makes every fucking mistake, in life, and even so I can still love her. Even as, she does things that are just the wrong thing to do, the big mistake. But I think it's very heartening, it makes me very happy, gratified that people have embraced her in spite of all her failings. I mean, that's, because what are we but a bunch of failings? All we succeed in some ways, and we try to put the blinders on about all the things. We don't want to think about all the mistakes we make. But that's what defines us, and we try to be forgiving about that.
I think there was a question here.
Good evening. I wanted to know how your method is from translating words on paper to the film form, which is so much more rich or complex with time, pacing, micro-expression, faces, light, etc., and how the director of photography plays into your method.
Well, those are, I'll talk about the camera person, whoever I work with, and I've worked with a good number. I always approach things the same way. First of all, my scripts, if you ever read any of my scripts, there's very little description, very, very little. I just have to identify the location, and only if something is necessary for the story do I even describe the prop. Because I need everything to be very fluid. I don't know what locations I'll find. I don't know what I can afford. So I have to be very fluid about these details. And I have a sense of what I'm looking for. And that sense can shift. And you have to be open to that. But you have to have some sense of what you're looking for, okay? And how that can serve you. And the story. Everything has to serve the story. When I spend basically with a feature about 2 or 3 weeks going over every page of the script. It's a very tedious process. We get through it twice over 2 or 3 weeks. And so that he knows or she knows what equipment they'll need or anything that will affect the crew. And so that when I'm on set, if I have to be busy with an actor in the makeup room or something, the camera person knows already from having spent that time with me what I'm looking for. And so he can set up a frame. And if it's and we can always readjust it, but that generally they have a sense of what I'm looking for, and that frees so that they can give me ideas that I wouldn't have thought of. I mean, if you want to be a director, the smart ones, I'm telling you, they work with people smarter than them. Like you get a DP who knows more than you, and you get a designer who knows more than you. That's how you elevate the experience, and that's how you learn and grow from it. I do a lot of. I love still photography, and I need a camera person who loves still photography also. I mean, I'll say, in Dark Horse, I had the guy at the Toys R Us. I say I need Andreas Gursky, and he knows what I'm talking about. And I talk to another DP, and I said that's an Eggleston moment, and he knows what I'm talking about. Or I'm looking for Martin Parr, whatever. These are reference points, and we often go through stills, books of stills, as reference points. So that because it's an imprecise language, but you have to be with someone who's sensitive to what you're trying to express, and this is the vocabulary you have to use.
Thank you. Maybe a very short follow-up. Where can someone watch your first movie, Fear, Anxiety, and Depression?
People have ways.
Okay. Thank you.
We're moving over there on the other side. Interesting questions.
Oh, they're very lively. I don't know. Everyone in Spain, they speak English. I don't know. If you were in America, no one speaks Spanish. I mean, if you go to a thing like this,
Hello, Mr. Solons. My question is, what is your think about the new American indie movies or the possibility, like the one thing small and cheap and indie like Everything Everywhere All at Once, could win the Oscar to the Oscar because it's a majority prime. What is your opinion about this phenomenon? Maybe the indie movies is more accessible to the audience now?
I have understood that.
Yeah, he wants to know what your opinion is about the current industry, indie cinema in America. No, indie American cinema.
What?
The independent American cinema, what do you think of the
situation
now?
Okay.
And that the film, like Everything Everywhere All at Once, may win an Oscar.
Oh,
You know,
well,
whether that can be considered independent or not.
Oscars are so not cool. So, I mean, if that's, where you're coming from, I mean, isn't it like almost every year, like that one, it's like getting the Pulitzer. It's like the sign of mediocrity, it's just, but I think the challenge today is, as far as I understand, is that movie theaters. Like in the United States, and I've learned in Spain, a lot of independent movie theaters are closing, and that makes things difficult, more challenging for the independent filmmaker. But the plus side for and look, I'll finish with a negative. The fact is, it's very hard to get, now when everyone's got, you click a button, you got a movie, it's just so accessible on the computer or the iPhone. You can watch anything, anytime. It's like, why go to the movie theater? It's like it costs so much more money and so forth. It's cheaper to do it this way. But I don't, I'm not a purist. I think, movies have there are different kinds of movies and different kinds of stories, and you can access them in all sorts of ways. I'm not a purist in that way. I do love the movie theater experience. I do love being in a dark room with other people, even if they're all laughing at a bad joke and what's wrong with these people. I like that experience, But so you can, it's like YouTube videos. Some of them just go viral, like billions of people have watched this little cat walking across the street, That's like, it's like these things are possible, that your movie, if you can get a certain attention from something that people get excited about, that's an opportunity for you. I do think also, like the High Maintenance, it was an HBO series about a marijuana dealer, but initially it was a web series, and it was the first web series that I ever saw that wasn't juvenile, sophomoric, amateurish. It was very smartly conceived and executed. A little 5-minute episode, a 12, a 7-minute episode, and if you don't want to show, it's only 5-minute thing, so it's no big deal. I think it's a wonderful opportunity for a young filmmaker to take advantage of that possibility to create a web series, because it's almost like opera. It's like the movie, it's almost like they've been so superseded by the force of television and television series, that it's become so niche. What was once like the cultural meeting point is no longer that way. No matter how much you love cinema, it just doesn't have that impact that it once did. I do think independent, when there's a movie that's, I love this movie. If you've seen Owen Klein's Funny Pages, I don't know if that came here yet. It's lovely little. It made no money here in the States, but it doesn't matter. Things, you have something fresh. If you have something fresh, I do believe audiences love it. They love to be surprised. That's what I'm looking for. I'm not looking for a correct story. I'm looking for something that's fresh, that feels unexpected. That wasn't like approved by Amazon or Netflix, that, oh, I didn't see that coming. That's very exciting. And that's what independent, in my sense of independence, really means. And so that's, but beware, I'm like not a role model for anybody here. It's tough going. But if you have something that feels fresh, there are platforms, possibilities for that being seen and making a mark.
Thank you. I think we have time for at least, well, let's see, 2 or 3 questions tops. So over there at the end, we'll see how we do.
Hello, Todd. Jesus Christ. I would like to ask you, what is your usual ritual before starting to write? Do you like to take a shower, go for a walk, go to the gym? What is the thing that motivates you, gives you that extra creativity spark?
Well, I do shower daily, okay? But my routine, I don't have a routine. But it's really, I have to have the music off. I can't look at any web news story. People are always sending me really funny stories. Super distracting. And then I can't be hungry, because if I'm hungry at all, that's all I think about. But I can't be too full, because then I get tired. So you have to find that right, perfect, like that sweet spot there where I have my banana. And
it's not
then,
that easy to answer, isn't it?
Sorry?
It's not that easy to answer, isn't it? What? Jesus Christ. It's not that easy to answer.
No, it's a very difficult question for me. You stumped me, okay? And all I can say is I just have to figure out a way every time. I don't know. When I'm in the thick of it, it's like it's all day long, and like I'm very attached to something. But getting started, once I was on a panel with David Foster Wallace, and we met the next day, and we had lunch, and he said, we were talking about how that period where you haven't quite gotten the motor going and found that story, it's like this limbo that's really excruciating. It's really hard to be in that place. It's like there are like a billion sperm, but only one of them is going to like attach, and that's kind of like what it is.
We'll move to the next question there, and I think it's probably would be time to wrap up after.
You're the director. Okay.
Hi, I have a question about creating shock value. Do you believe audiences from 30 years ago, where your first movies came out, had different shock reactions to the shocking moments in your scripts? And do you believe creating those shock moments would be different today?
Well, I can tell you that movies like Welcome to the Dollhouse, Happiness, Storytelling, they would not get financed today. That's for sure. So I'm lucky I lived when I lived, in that sense. What's shocking to some people is like been there, done that to others, I think when I make my movies, I'm not thinking, oh, this is gonna shock them. Whoa, I'm just like telling a story, and I'm invested in it. But I don't think about how I learn. It sort of startles me when people are shocked in a way. Even as I know it's delicate, but when people say, he came out, his face was white. I said, oh, really? Whoa, I didn't know that wasn't my intention. And as a filmmaker, with what I do, it's very tricky and troubling also because I can't control the way people take in my movies. And years ago, there was a screening of Happiness at the Telluride Film Festival. And a young man, probably 18 or 20, I don't know, a little bit drunk, he came up to me and he said, "Oh, that was so cool, I loved that movie, your movie was so great, I loved it, and when that kid got raped, whoa, that was hilarious." And I just said, "Thank you." That was like not where my head was, but it's like it troubled me, it always stayed with me, the idea that it would be taken that way. Because as much as I see these movies as, let's say, sad comedies, they are very sad and moving for me. And my intention is, to connect with the audience, not to shock them.
Do you think that this shock value that some people see in your films has to do with the fact that it's difficult to find your films now in these big platforms, streaming platforms where,
I take pride in being an artifact from another time. Maybe, I think actually Happiness, I know they're working on a Criterion thing for that. And then maybe Palindromes also. I can't worry. It was wonderful making. I'm not interested in revisiting and looking at my old movies. I don't, like, on a nice cozy evening, like, watch one of my old movies. Like, that would be, like, so unpleasant, so tiresome. I'm always thinking about what I want to do next. And I have different projects, which one of them I hope will take off. And I've written a memoir, which I can't publish because my parents are still alive. My dad is 97, okay? It may be a posthumous publication. So we'll see. I don't know.
Well, at least the public in Barcelona will have the chance to revisit your films at the Filmoteca. So that's a great.
I'm very honored. Look, this is. When I was young, I said, "Oh my God, this is like the dream. I'm living the dream." I'll leave it there.
One more question, and I think. Hold on a second. There's one. No, right behind you.
Hi. I didn't think I was ever gonna be able to ask you that, and maybe it's something stupid. But in Dark Horse, is there a coincidence? Is it a coincidence that the lead actor looks like Harvey Weinstein?
What? Who looks like Harvey Weinstein?
In Dark Horse,
in the airport. Oh, in Dark Horse. Oh, he does. I know what you mean.
Maybe.
If only a handsome version. He's much younger. Yeah, I didn't think about that, and this is all pre-Me Too. So that. No, I thought of there was a magazine called Mad Magazine. I'm sure that you got some version of it, but there was a cartoonist. It reminded me of this cartoon character, but no, I wasn't thinking of Harvey Weinstein. And it's funny, that character though. I always thought people would rather like spend cocktails with Putin than spend any time with this character, and that's why I liked him, because he was so unhip and uncool. And nobody would ever want to be associated with him. And that's what really made me love him.
Thank you. And this is truly the last one. Thank you.
You just said movies like Welcome to the Dollhouse and Happiness, they would not be financed today. They wouldn't find finance. And you just said yourself censoring yourself about publishing your memoir. So take no offense, but I was wondering if you came up with shit as unacceptable as that in today's standards, would you, like, consider financing it yourself? Would you, like, even consider maybe going straight to YouTube and, putting it out there, and those who are interested are going to find it? What would you do?
You mean if I wanted to make those movies today, would I find
something as unacceptable, as politically, incorrect in today's terms, which is a lot more, as you were saying, than it used to be.
Well, movies are expensive, and I don't, have the $3 million to throw out. So, I like to be cautiously optimistic that even as the world falls apart around us, that maybe I will get financing. I just like to be that way. And if not, I always have to be, in some sense, I make movies or I write a script or a play, what have you. I do it because I have to be writing something. I have to, and because I'm very susceptible to depression. And if I'm not working on something, I will succumb to a depression. And so it's not even so much that I need to make a movie, as I just have to kind of ward off depression. And this is how I've been doing it. That's why I love teaching, for those moments where I see all those struggling, miserable, anxious students, I'm free and I feel I feel good about myself. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. We hope to welcome you here again.
Thank you. Gracias.
And thank you for the wonderful questions. You've made my job very, very easy. So.